That was easy. Oh Lord. Something's telling me this is not going to be fun. Alright, so these have a taper in them. And one side, actually on the left, which is still original on the bottom. Both of these are original on the bottom. And it looks like they replaced the top plates. And as I said, I'll show you some quick photos here, that these frame rails in the front, they straighten them out, but they're not completely straight. So the results are that this thing is all a little bit still cattywampus. So I'm going to have to do some milling to get this to fit. And once I got that so it fits up, then I should be able to fit this right over. So that goes on pretty damn well. So we just, at this point, I just need to get this wooden block in where it belongs, and then we can put the bumper back on. Alright, so I took the wooden block down to the machine shop, and I thinned these webs down on both sides on the bandsaw. Now I've got a nice fit. It's a little snug, but I think that's fine that it's going to be snug. So it'll help bridge the gap between this top and bottom support, bumper support, so that when I compress the bolts, that the bolts will compress against this block. So I'm happy with that. But it brought up another minor problem, is nothing lines up. So I mentioned earlier in the vid that these frame rails are slightly tweaked, and they are. Not enough to get all excited. The Jeep tracks really well going down the highway, so I'm not going to get excited about the fact that these are tweaked a little bit. And if you're familiar with these old Jeeps, one of the weak points in them is that the shackle for the front of the springs mount up on the front of the frame rails, or the frame extensions, or the extension horns. And that can cause, if they're off really bad, that can cause some drivability issues, some tracking issues. In this case, it's not bent enough to cause me a lot of issues, and I'm not going to worry about it. It's only off. I think I did some measurements, and it's off less than 1/4 of an inch from side to side. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to enjoy the Jeep the way it is. But what that's done is that's caused some alignment issues, so that these holes going all the way down through, because these original bottoms are still intact and the top ones are new, it all has to line up. And the problem that we're having is that this insert that was added does not line up. And you can see, I think, that the holes don't go straight down all the way through. Now at this point, and it would be the same on this other side as well. It's not off a lot, but it is off a little bit. So I'm going to end up moving these holes in the bumper both inward, probably about, I'm going to guess, 1/8 of an inch. I might just drill them oversized. Drilling them oversized might be the easiest way to do it. I'm going to need to put a washer on the top, so the washer will hide it. So I'm going to go drill those holes out a little bit bigger, and hopefully that's all I need to do to get this thing to work. Alright, so we're down in the shop, and we're going to use the Bridgeport mill. to elongate these holes. I thought I could do it with a drill, but really, probably the best way to handle this is with a mill. I am using a deburring mill because it's the only one I had that would fit in that hole. It works actually pretty well. Now, unlike when we use or cut wood, where we need that RPM up as fast as we can, when we're doing this metal, we want to slow those RPMs way down. So I've got the mill set at its lowest speed. I can't go any slower. I've clamped this in the mill. I've used the wood backer for the bumper to help tighten this and secure it. And I've already done an experiment on one hole to make sure that this mill was up to the task, and it is. So we're going to do that. I'll take you through the one. I'll show you what I'm doing, show you how I'm doing it, and then the others I'm going to do off camera. There are 8 of them to do. Well, now there's 7 of them left to do, and it's going to be time consuming. I got to set up each hole, blah blah blah. So anyway, let's go ahead and do this hole. The last thing I need to do is I'm going to set over and square those holes up. It looks really good. I'll bring it back when it's done. I also have to drill through that wooden block, so I'll show you that as well. So clearly now the wooden insert, the hole in that, is also out of alignment. So the next thing we need to do is drill or elongate the hole in the wooden block, the oak block. I've got a drill that is the same size as the hole. What I want to do, if I can, is I want to actually set that over and see if I can't drill it out, oversize this thing in the correct direction. I don't want to drill it oversized. I don't want to drill a bigger hole. So I'm going to try to set that drill over probably the entire size of the drill. I don't know. We'll try that. I'm going to counterbore it first, or center bore it first. See if I can get some place for this drill to pick up. Because what I'm concerned is that the drill is going to wander over and pick up the existing hole, and if it does that, then I'm probably stuck just making it a bigger hole. So let's try offsetting it first and see if that gets us where we're looking to be. So I'm starting with the largest center drill that I've got, which is actually bigger than the drill that I'm using. Alright, so I've got it aligned this way. Now I'm just going to come over and see if I can't pick up, quite literally, the edge of the hole. And I'm going to go in and center drill it. Actually, I need to turn up the speed of the machine. So let's do that. We'll bring it up just one set of pulleys. Let's see if that likes it enough so that it doesn't wander over back into the hole. So far, so good. Alright, we're through. Let's see if we can't clean up those edges. That that worked really nice. So let's take this all back up to the Jeep, put it all back in place to do a dry fit, make sure that the bolts go all the way down through. So, first glance, it looks really good, but let's see if these bolts will actually go all the way through. All right, there's that one. That went through really nicely. That one's going to need a little bit of TLC. Alright, that one went through. And then the last one. She was happy all the way through. Alright, so we've got this thing fit up really well. Alright, I'm happy. There's no tension on the screws, no tension on the bumper. It just fits. And all the bolts come through. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do whatever little bit of filing with a rasp that or a rat tail file that I need to do, and I'll get those so they fit very easily. I don't want to ruin the threads while I'm doing this. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the oak block down to the shop. I'm going to do a really quick sanding job on it just to clean up any of the burrs. Then we're going to put some finish on it. I haven't decided what I'm going to use for finish just yet. I don't know if I'm going to use boiled linseed oil, which is probably a good choice, or there's a couple other finishes that I've got in mind to do this for. So I'm sanding this less to make it pretty and more to clean off some of the markings that I've put on it while I was working on it. The other thing is that I wanted to pull off some of the wood chips and the burrs that got installed or put on when it was manufactured. And the other reason is if we get a nice clean sanded surface, the linseed oil is going to do a little bit better job sort of flowing out and absorbing into the wood. Now, I did decide to use boiled linseed oil. It's a really great finish. I've got no objections to it. I use it on a lot of different projects. The downside, if there is one, to boiled linseed oil is it's a little bit slow to dry. So rather than really being well cured in 8, 10, 12 hours, it's going to take a couple days to fully cure. Within a day, it'll be dry enough so that I can do the install, which is the plan. I'm going to do the install. So before I do this, I want to give a shout out to one of my friends, Earl. Earl, you know who you are. Earl is always commenting that I always go 3 steps further than the average person might go. And Earl would say, well, why are you painting it? Or why are you going to put finish on it? And from the strictest of measures, he's absolutely right. I could install this without the paint, or rather without the finish, and it would be just fine. But so Earl, I did sand it, and yes, I'm going to put some linseed oil onto this to protect it and make it look nice. So how am I going to do that? Well, I am going to mix what I hope is enough for a couple coats. So I got this 1 cup, whatever its measure is, I don't care that much. And then I'm going to thin that down by about 1/3. And I'm doing that for a couple reasons. The first reason is it's going to flow on easier, and by flowing on easier, it'll allow itself to lay flatter. It'll sort of spread out through the through the pores easier. And the other reason is it'll absorb a little bit better into the grain structure of the oak. Oak is it's a very porous wood. It's hard, but the grain structure is fairly large, and this will help the finish flow down into the wood pores itself a little easier. You don't need to thin it. It's just something that I prefer to do. I always thin my finishes. If you want to understand a little bit more of my reasoning for thinning finishes, you can sign up for my Patreon page and get some exclusive videos that discuss this very subject. Alright, so let's start on the back. This is the part that's going to be hidden inside the bumper. Now, any of you woodworkers or budding woodworkers, never ignore the end grain. Wood is hygroscopic. It absorbs and gives off moisture, and it does that constantly through its life. So even once it's been kiln dried, you kiln dry it to a certain moisture level, but the truth is it will absorb moisture throughout its life. So by putting finish onto the end grains, it doesn't stop that hygroscopic action, but what it does is slows it down or gives you a little bit more control over it. If you've ever watched any of my pad install vids, you'll notice that I always go back after I cut it and I put some finish on the end grain before I put the pad on. And it's the same thing, same reason, because I want to keep that moisture from absorbing into that end grain and shrinking and swelling the butt, because literally over time the butt, depending on the humidity or how dry the air is, will shrink or swell and make the pad fit less than ideal. So never ever ignore your end grains. Oak is actually a very beautiful wood if it's handled or finished correctly. And believe it or not, some of you may, if you've been on the channel long enough, know that I also build guitars. Oak is a fantastic sound wood or tone wood, and some of the nicest sounding guitars tonally have been guitars that have been made out of oak. It's just the ability of that wood to vibrate and to resonate out sound is incredible. So oak is not something that is just for cabinets or furniture. It's really a great tone wood. All right, let's let that dry. I'm going to let that dry for about 8 hours, and later on this afternoon or tonight I'll come back and put the second coat on, and that'll give it, like I say, the second coat tonight will give it, it'll give it 12, 13, 14 hours to dry enough so that I can get it put onto that Jeep, and we can button up the project. So I have the oak block coated with linseed oil, and it's ready to go on. And while that was drying, I also went and repainted the bumper. Gave that a nice fresh coat of gloss black, Rust-Oleum. And while I was doing all this work, I kind of beat it up a little bit, chipped it in a few places. So I repainted that. I also repainted the inside of these frame horns because they were showing a little bit of rust as well. So at this point, we're ready to put this thing together. There's nothing else to do. So Now I did have to do a little bit of hand fitting on the holes because I needed to make them a little bit bigger in a couple spots so that the through bolts would go through without any difficulty. And I also did that as well. All right. So the oak block is in place. That's where it needs to be. It's all done. The last thing we need to do is put this bumper back on. And it goes on really, really easy and quite nice at this point. I've got these through bolts that I bought from Willys. I also went to Abishan Hardware and I bought these stainless steel washers because I need to cover up the elongated holes that I made. Just like that. So as I was saying, the only ones I can put in right now are the center ones because I have to install these spacers that Willys sent that go on this inner one. But these are really way too long, so I'm going to have to mill those down. That's the last thing I have to do, and I'll take you through the process of milling those. There we go. Alright, I am going to leave these two inner ones loose while I get these bushings or these spacers fitted up. That way I'll be able to manipulate or move this bumper around enough to get this done. So let's take these down to the shop and get these milled up to the right size. So these spacers, as I mentioned, are a little bit too long, so I have to shorten them. Now, I also mentioned that the frame horns got a little twisted, and even though they straightened them out a little bit, there's still a difference between the spacing between the top bumper mount and the lower bumper mount. So I'm going to have to cut these down, and these come through at 3.5. I'm going to have to cut one down to 3 1/4 and one down to 3 inches. I'm going to lob off the major parts of the excess with a hacksaw, and then I'm going to bring them over to the mill, and then I'll side mill and smooth those out and make them look pretty. Or I may put them on the lathe. Lathe may be the better way to do this. So I decided we're going to turn them on the lathe instead. So when I was cutting this stuff, it actually felt pretty hard. So let's hope this cuts all right. So let's go up and dry fit them and see how they look. And if it looks good, then we'll install it. If it doesn't look good, I'm just going to come back and fix them. Alright, so I got the cut lengths right, and they actually fit extremely well. So let's get these installed. And get these last bolts in. Nice. Because all those spacers do is prevent the side of the channel of or the sides of the bumper, which is a C channel, from collapsing when you tighten it up. So it'll tighten up as far as the length of the spacers go. That way you're not collapsing or bending the bumper. So and it does. Yay! I love these little ratcheting box end wrenches. All right, let me get you some close-ups of this and then we'll close the video out. Alright, so we've got this one done. That should have been a simple job, but it really wasn't. Now, I've been doing restorations for a very, very long time, whether it's old Jeeps, old buildings, or the old firearms that I also do up on this channel. When things get to be old and they get to be used and things get twisted and bent and sometimes abused, and sometimes you've just got to compensate for that. And in some cases, even the original manufacturers of something weren't exactly precise by today's measurements. So sometimes you just need to do the extra work to get this stuff to fit. And not only to fit, but to look nice when you're done. So I think I've accomplished that. This is a nice looking job. Now we're going to take this down to the Merrimack Valley Military Vehicles Collectors Show at the end of the month, end of July, down in Ware, New Hampshire. This show it's been around for a very, very long time, and a lot of very nice old collectible military vehicles show up. This will be the first time I've put a vehicle in the show. I've attended before, but this is the first time I'm actually bringing one of my Jeeps down. So if you're from New England and you're thinking you might want to head down to the show, I'm hoping to be there on Friday. I won't be able to make the Saturday show, but I'm hoping to be there on Friday. So that should be a really, really great experience. They haven't done the show in a couple of years now because of COVID. So they're looking forward, the whole group is looking forward to it. But anyway, consider end of July. Another thing, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ring the bell so you get notified the next time I post a video. Consider signing up for my Patreon page. I'm running into some issues with YouTube. They're not wanting to monetize my gun videos. I'll talk about that in a future video. So these things, they take time, they take energy, they take money to produce. So if you're interested in any of the content and you're willing to give $3, $5, consider going over there. Also, in the bottom of every one of these videos, down near the description, there is an individual thanks that you can click and donate some small amount of money to each video if you're interested. Please consider that as well. Now, am I going to do any more on this Jeep right now? Probably not. I think the next thing I want to do is go over onto the green 46 and put that new fuel pump in. That Jeep will not run, and I need to get that one running before the summer's out. Oh, one more thing, guys. I did get the gray Jeep insured. I insured it through Haggerty. Not sponsored. Got it insured through Haggerty, so I'll be able to take this thing down the road on a little more frequent basis, and I can take you guys along for that. So we're gonna go for rides, and we're gonna work on that green CJ2A. See you guys next time.